So this will be our sign for the garden. The garden corral. You can see the other side of it's a nice piece of the end piece of a cedar. So now I'm going to carve or Dremel out those words and then stain her up. And then when I stain it up, it'll really pop out. I'll paint the colors black. So I'm cutting around the letters just so it has a nice separation for where the letter starts and the wood ends. And some of the spots are harder than others, so I get in there and be good with it. There we go. Now, let's see how she goes with the Dremel. Let's get right in on there. Let's zoom in right on the T. See how that goes. Use the finer bit. See there, yeah, finer bit for the ends where it kind of narrows out there, the bottoms right here. Now this is just the fast time motion of doing the E. So again, cutting with the knife to get the grain cut on the edges, and then using, in this case I used the smaller bit first, I guess because I didn't feel like replacing the other one. Getting the narrower pieces and then moving to the bigger saber tooth bit, and then finishing up the E. And from there, did a little bit more fine tuning, then some sanding, just to get the grain down and smooth. Corral. Have to do the corral part today. It's just a really long sign. So what I like to do first is I'm going to cut around the lettering. So when I do use the Dremel, at least it doesn't rip out a piece because I've already pre-cut around the edges. So I'll just do a little bit of that, show you how that works. So just go in and cut around, take your time. Some of this cedar has some funny grain to it, so as you're cutting, it'll kind of pops a little bit because you'll hit like a pocket of softer wood, or you'll hit a harder piece. If this was smaller lettering, it would depend on the wood if I would do this or not. But with the cedar, I find this helps because it is fairly brittle wood and it chips out. So this just gives me a little bit of grace when I'm using the Dremel for cutting that out. So I just go around all the edges. I have to change my position to get it sometimes, and sometimes it does skip on me, so I gotta be careful. If I'm cutting into the letter, it's not a huge deal, but if I cut outside the letter, it can affect the look. So I don't know if you can see that well. I'll zoom in. Let's even zoom in really close. You can just see where I've cut around there. So now when I come in with the Dremel, it doesn't have a chance of like saying ripping out that piece. So I just go around it like that. So that's my first step. I use this saber-tooth bit. It's really aggressive in a sense, like it'll just rip out the wood in a nice way. And then I go through and go around the letter, and then anything that's too small for the lettering for this to fit into, then I'll use like a smaller saber-tooth bit of sorts. So here we go.
So there we have it. There's the letter C. For the rest of the Corral, I'm going to put it on fast motion. Then some sandpaper. Sorry, I've got my mask on.
And here I've got it on fast motion to show you the process. And the reason I've kept this in here is because I want people to see that the process does take a while, and it takes a few goes at it. I don't usually sit down and do it all in one sitting. I usually do it in breaks just to give myself a break from getting carried away or maybe going too quick when it gets kind of redundant. And then obviously doing the carving and the sanding, and then moving on to the next letter step by step, and then moving the board along. And here I'm cutting again. The cutting probably is the hardest part, in the sense of the hardest on the hands, because you have to hold the little X-Acto knife really, really tight. Reminds me of when I was in elementary school and you'd be doing a lot of writing and you'd get that little indent in your finger. Same kind of idea with this X-Acto knife. And then off to the Dremel again we go. And just doing the R, the A. Looks like I have the big bit in right now. And then obviously I'll follow up with the small bit to get the narrow parts of the R and the A and the L. And then at that point, I'm going to sand again, as usual. And then here we are sanding again. And usually my rule of thumb for sanding is when you think you've sanded enough, you probably should do some more. That's usually my motto, because sanding, you're never really done sanding, to be honest with you. You should always do lots of sanding, more than you think you should. And here I'm just trying a little sander on the Dremel. I don't know if it really helps or works. I didn't do it on the whole piece. I just did it here. Hello everybody. I'm going to be painting the inside of my lettering right now. And how I do it is I use an old syringe. I'll just show you how I suck this up. Sorry. There we go. And then in the lettering here, I just squeeze out a little bit all the way along. If I have too much, that's okay, I'll use it in the next one. And then I just go along and do a quick little paintbrush all around so it kind of soaks in on the edges, and then I go and take my time pulling it up to the edges like this. And that's where it's nice to have a little reservoir of liquid in there to pull up to. And that's how I get the letters to be nice and dark and crisp. And then I do this side here too, both sides. But I think you've got the picture. I actually use a high heat enamel black paint because I had it. And there's the Final painting done for the sign. Now it's just on to staining next. I don't think I can get a full, well, maybe I can if I do that. Today we're gonna stain the garden corral sign. I like to use Helmsman's spar urethane. All I have is a semi-gloss. I don't like the gloss. I'd either go semi-gloss or satin. 3 coats. And then we can put it up on the garden. So I'm doing the backside first here and just do a really light coat on the backside and did the sides, because if you do a really thick coat you get the chance of it running and you get these ugly running spots on it. So now I'm doing the front of it. So there's the first coat. The first coat's in some ways the easiest because you can see the change really easily. It's the next few coats that are harder where you start to get drips if you put it on too thick. So the key is not putting it on very thick and just being patient with it and following the instructions. So what I will do is let it dry for at least 6 hours, then give it a light sanding with 220 grit, and then brush it off and then recoat again. There it is. It's coming together. Thanks for watching. Next video we'll have it hung in the garden.